Hello good listeners, welcome to Literate. In this video, we will be continuing our book Why I Am an Atheist by Bhagat Singh. This is the 5th chapter named Statement of Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt in Assembly Bomb Case, written on 6 June 1929. This is a copy of statement made by Bhagat Singh and B.K. Dutt after they threw bombs in Central Assembly Hall and were arrested for the same. Please subscribe to the channel for free audiobooks. Hit like button and do leave your feedback in comment section. I suggest you to use headphones for better experience. Here we begin the essay. We stand charged with certain serious offences, and at this stage it is but right that we must explain our conduct. In this connection, the following questions arise. First, were the bombs thrown into the chamber, and if so, why? Second, is the charge as framed by lower court correct or otherwise? To the first half of the first question, our reply is in the affirmative. But since some of the so-called eyewitnesses have perjured themselves, and since we are not denying our liability to that extent, let our statement about them to be judged for what it is worth. By way of an illustration, we may point out that the evidence of Sergeant Terry regarding the seizure of the pistol from one of us is a deliberate falsehood, for neither of us had the pistol at the time we gave ourselves up. Other witnesses, too, who have deposed to having seen bombs being thrown by us, have not scrupled to tell lies. This phase had its own morals for those who aim at judicial purity and fair play. At the same time, we acknowledge the fairness of the public prosecutor and the judicial attitude of the court so far. Viceroy's views endorsed. In our reply to the next half of the first question, we are constrained to go into some detail to offer a full and frank explanation of our motive and the circumstances leading up to what has now become a historic event. When we were told by some of the police officers who visited us in jail that Lord Irwin, in his address to the joint session of the two houses, described the event as an attack directed against no individual but against an institution itself, we readily recognized that the true significance of the incident had been correctly appreciated. We are next to none in our love for humanity. Far from having any malice against any individual, we hold human life sacred beyond words. We are neither perpetrators of dastardly outrage and therefore a disgrace to country, as the pseudo-socialist Diwan Chaman Lal is reported to have described us. Nor are we lunatics, as the Tribune of Lahore and some others would have it believed. Practical protest. We humbly claim to be no more than serious students of the history and condition of our country and her aspirations. We despise hypocrisy. Our practical protest was against the institution, which since its birth has immensely helped to display not only its worthlessness but its far-reaching power for mischief. More, we have been convicted that it exists only to demonstrate to world Indians' humiliation and helplessness, and it symbolizes the overriding domination of an irresponsible and autocratic rule. Time and again, the national demand has been pressed by the people's representatives only to find waste paper basket as its final destination. Attack on institution. Solemn resolution passed by the House have been contemptuously trampled underfoot on the floor of the so-called Indian Parliament. Resolution regarding the repeal of the repressive and arbitrary measures have been treated with sublime contempt, and the government measures and the proposals rejected as unacceptable by the elected members of the legislature have been restored by mere stroke of the pen. In short, we have utterly failed to find any justification for the existence of an institution which, despite all its pomp and splendor, organized with the hard-earned money of the sweating millions of Indians, is only a hollow show and a mischievous make-believe. Alike, have we failed to comprehend the mentality of the public leaders who help the government to squander public time and money on such a manifestly stage-managed exhibition of Indians' helpless subjection. No hope for labor. We have been ruminating upon all these matters as also upon the wholesale arrest of the leaders of the labor movement. When the introduction of the Trade Disputes Bill brought us into assembly to watch its progress, the course of the debate only served to confirm our conviction that the laboring millions of Indians had nothing to expect from an institution that stood as a menacing monument to the strangling of the exploiters and the serfdom of the helpless laborers. Finally, the insult of what we consider an inhuman and barbarous measure was hurled on the devoted head of the representatives of the entire country, and the starving and struggling millions were deprived of their primary right and the sole means of improving their economic welfare. None who has felt like us for the dumb-driven drudges of laborers could possibly witness this spectacle with equanimity. None whose heart bleeds for them who have given their lifeblood in silence of the building up of the economic structure would repress the cry which this ruthless blow had wrung out of our hearts. Bomb needed. Consequently, bearing in mind the words of the late Mr. S.R. Das, once law member of the Governor General's Executive Council, which appeared in the famous letter he had addressed to his son, to the effect that the bomb was necessary to awaken England from her dreams. We dropped the bomb on the floor of Assembly Chamber to register our protest on behalf of those who had no other means left to give expression to their heart-rending agony. Our sole purpose was to make the deaf hear and to give the heedless a timely warning. Others have as keenly felt as we have done, and from under the seeming stillness of the sea of Indian humanity, a veritable storm is about to break out. We have only hoisted the danger signal to warn those who were speeding along without heeding the grave dangers ahead. We have only marked the end of an era of utopian non-violence, of whose futility the rising generation has been convinced beyond the shadows of the doubt. Ideal explained. We have used the expression utopian non-violence in the foregoing paragraph, which requires some explanation. Force when aggressively applied is violence, and is therefore morally unjustifiable. But when it is used in the furtherance of a legitimate cause, it has its moral justification. The elimination of force at all cost in utopian and the new movement which has arisen in the country, and of that dawn we have given a warning, is inspired by the ideal which guided Guru Gobind Singh and Shivaji, Kamal Pasha and Riza Khan, Washington and Garibaldi, Lafayette and Lenin. As both the alien government and the Indian public leaders appear to have shut their eyes to the existence of this movement, we felt it as our duty to sound a warning where it could not go unheard. We have so far dealt with the motive behind the incident in question, and now we must define the extent of our intention. No personal grudge. We bore no personal grudge or malice against anyone of those who have received slight injuries or against any other person in the assembly. On the contrary, we repeat that we hold human life sacred beyond words, and would sooner lay down on our lives in the service of humanity than injure anyone else. Unlike the mercenary soldiers of the imperialist army who are disciplined to kill without compunction, we respect and, in so far as it lies in our power, we attempt to save human life. And still we admit having deliberately thrown the bombs into the assembly chamber. Facts, however, speak for themselves, and our intention would be judged from the results of the action without bringing in utopian hypothetical circumstances and presumptions. No miracle. Despite the evidence of the government expert, the bombs that were thrown in the assembly chamber resulted in slight damage to an empty bench and some slight abrasion in less than half a dozen cases, while government, scientists and experts have ascribed this result to a miracle. We see nothing but a precisely scientific process in all this incident. Firstly, the two bombs exploded in vacant spaces within the wooden barriers of the desks and benches. Secondly, even those who were within 2 feet of the explosion, for instance, Mr. P. Rao, Mr. Shankar Rao, and Sir George Brewster, were either not hurt or only slightly scratched. Bombs of the capacity deposed to by the government expert Though his estimate being imaginary is exaggerated, loaded with an effective charge of potassium chloride and sensitive liquid would have smashed the barriers and laid many low within some yards of the explosion. Again, had they been loaded with some other high explosives with a charge of destructive pellets or darts, they would have sufficed to wipe out the majority of the members of the Legislative Assembly. Still again, we could have flung them into the official box, which was occupied by some notable persons. And finally, we could have ambushed Sir John Simon, whose luckless commission was loathed by all responsible people and who was sitting in President's gallery at the time. All these things, however, were beyond our intention, and Bohm did no more than they were designed to do. And the miracle consisted in no more than the deliberate aim which landed them in safe places. We then deliberately offered ourselves to bear the penalty for what we had done and to let the imperialist exploiters know that by crushing individuals, they cannot kill ideas. By crushing two insignificant units, a nation cannot be crushed. We want to emphasize the historical lesson that Lettres de Cassette and Bastilles could not crush the revolutionary movement in France. Gallows and the Siberian mines could not extinguish the Russian revolutionary. Bloody Sunday and Black and Tans failed to strangle the movement of Irish freedom. Can ordinances and safety bills snuff out the flames of freedom in India? Conspiracy cases, trumped up or discovered, and the incarnation of all young men who cherish the vision of a great ideal cannot check the march of revolution. But a timely warning, if not unheeded, can help to prevent loss of life and general sufferings. We took it upon ourselves to provide this warning, and our duty is done. Revolution does not necessarily involve sanguinary strife, nor is there any place in it for individual vendetta. It is not the cult of the bomb and the pistol. By revolution, we mean that the present order of things, which is based on manifest injustice, must change. Producers or laborers, in spite of being the most necessary element of society, are robbed by their exploiters of the fruit of their labor and deprived of their elementary rights. The peasant who grows corn for all starves with his family. The weaver who supplies the world market with textile fabrics has not enough to cover his own and his children's bodies. Masons, smiths, and carpenters who raise magnificent palaces live like pariahs in slums. The capitalists and the exploiters, the parasites of society, squander millions on their whims. These terrible inequalities or forced disparity of changes are bound to lead to chaos. This state of affair cannot last long, and it is obvious that the present order of society in merrymaking is on the brink of a volcano. The whole edifice of this civilization, if not saved in time, shall crumble. A radical change, therefore, is necessary, and it is the duty of those who realize it to reorganize society on the socialist basis. Unless this thing is done, and the exploitation of men by men and of nations by nation is brought to an end, suffering and carnage with which humanity is threatened today cannot be prevented. All talk of ending war and unshearing in an era of universal peace is undisguised hypocrisy. By revolution, we mean the ultimate establishment of an order of a society which may not be threatened by such breakdown, and in which the sovereignty of proletariat should be recognized, and the word federation should redeem humanity from the bondage of capitalism and misery of imperial wars. This is our ideal, and with this ideology as our inspiration, we have given a fair and loud enough warning. If, however, it goes unheeded and the present system of government continues to be an impediment in the way of natural forces that are swelling up, a grim struggle will ensue, involving the overthrow of all obstacles and the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat to pave the way of consummation of the ideal of revolution. Revolution is an inalienable right of mankind. Freedom is an imperishable birthright of all. Labor is the real sustainer of society, the sovereignty of the ultimate destiny of the workers. For these ideals and for this faith, we shall welcome any suffering to which we may be condemned. At the altar of this revolution, we have brought our youth as an incense, for no sacrifice is too great for so magnificent a cause. We are content We await the advent of revolution. Long live the revolution. This was the 5th chapter of our very first book. Stay tuned for upcoming videos covering the rest of the chapters. Thanks and keep listening to Literate.